Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Peites Amud Beis. 9 lines from the bottom at the new Mishnah. Our Mishnah returns to the subject that we began at the end of the 6th parak, that continued on the 7th parak, and took a little bit of a break in the beginning of our 9th parak. And that is the shiurim, the various shiurim for things that cannot be taken out on Shabbos, lest the person be chayiv a korban chatos for the malacha of hoitzah. Says the Mishnah, hamoitzi eitzim, a person who takes out wood, the shear is kedei levashel beitza kala, in order to then cook a egg of a hen. Tavlin, what is the shear of tavlin? The minimum shear is kedei letabil beitza kala, to put tavlinin, spices, on a beitza kala, again referring to a hen's egg. Umitztarfin ze im ze, the tavlinin that a person spices the egg with, they can be different type of spices and they will combine to make the same shiur. Klipe agoizim v'klipe rimonim istis upua, various types of dyes. A woman who would wear a cap on her head, a woolen cap, they would put a beged, a small little piece of beged that was dyed to give it some color. That amount of dye is going to then be sufficient to mechayiv a korban chatos. Meiraglayim, neser, uboris, kmulya, va'ashleg. All of these things are different detergents. Says the Mishnah, Kedei lechabes beged koton pisavcho. This is going to be then to clean this beged koton we just mentioned, that's going to be on the cap of a woman. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Kedei lahavir es hakesem. Rabbi Yehuda argues and says even a smaller shiur. These are things that have to do with taking away the blood of a nida on a garment. In order to then be toivel the garment and then allow it to become tohor, it has to then first remove the kesem of the dam, and that's done by these various detergents. The Mishnah in Nida lists 7 detergents, and this over here lists 5, and Rabbi Yehuda says these 5 therefore have the significance of removing the dam nida. Says the Gemara, Tanina Chada Zimna, we taught once before, Kaneh Kedei La'asas Kulmus, a kaneh, which refers to a piece of reed, that is the size to make a kulmus, a quill. And we learned over there in Daf Pei Amud Beis, what is the size of this quill that we're referring to? It says, until it reaches the Kishrei Etzba Oisav. And there was a shaila in the Gemara, does that mean all the way to the part where the fingers meet the hand, or does that go only till the knuckles before that, the first joints before the knuckles themselves? The Gemara left it as a teku. Al Kapanim, the Gemara is saying that we already learned that when it comes to a reed that can be used as a quill, that is the shiur, and therefore we said klip. Therefore we said im haya'ov or merusos, if this kaneh is either wide, it's fat, or it is broken and it cannot be used as a quill, the shear is kedei lavashel beitza kala shebebeitzim trufa unasuna beilfas. In order to then cook a hen's egg, when you were to scramble it and mix it with oil and put it onto a hot pot, that is the shear. And doesn't mean to then completely cook the entire egg, but rather it means the shear of a kegrogeris of that egg. Al Kopani, what we see over here is that this is already taught, that the shear is the kedei levashel beitza kala. So why does our Mishnah have to mention eitzim, which is really what a kana is? If a kana cannot be used as a quill, then it's a piece of wood. Whereby, why does our Mishnah have to state that eitzim, the shear, minimum shear of eitzim is kedei levashel beitza kala? Answers the Gemara, Mao Desema, Hasam Hudelochazi Lemidi. There I might think to say that it's not useful whatsoever, and therefore has to have the size Kedei Levashel Beitza Kala. Aval eitzin dechazu lechacha ukilido afilu koshu. But a piece of wood, a small chip of wood that can be used as a tooth for a key that goes into a lock, that is sufficient, and therefore a much smaller shear is necessary to mechayiv a korban chatos. Kamash malan, since that's not the normal thing that chips of wood are used for, but rather the typical usage of wood is to make a fire with, therefore the shear is kedei levashel beitza kala. The Mishnah goes on to say, Tavlin kedei tavel beitza kala. This is the spices that will spice a beitza kala. Again, we said a beitza of a hen. Frek the Gemara asks, Uraminhu, Tavlin shnayim v'gimel shemois mimin echod. If there are tavlin that have 2 or 3 of the same names, the same type, for example, black pepper, white pepper, and a long elongated pepper, that's where the tavlin comes from. Or mishloshim minin, or there are 3 different types. So if these are, let's say, have an iser of orla, for example, these spices, asur, and if they're put onto a food, then the dish is also going to be osur. If they're, however, not the size on its own of a tavlin on its own, let's say the black pepper, to then render the food to be also osur. So the Mishnah goes on to say, umitztarfin ze'im zeh, but the tavlins, they will then mitztarif, they will combine with one another to make the shiur, to then make that which it comes upon the food, that food that it comes upon will be then osur as well. V'amar Chizki, and Chizki taught about this Mishnah, b'minei mesika shonu. They taught that we're talking about various things for flavoring. Because it's fitting to then bring about a flavoring of this kedeira, of this pot of food. Taimo dechazu lemet matek es hakedeira. The Gemara is medayik, therefore it says only because they are fitting to then cause flavoring to the food, to that pot. However, halav hochi lo. But if it would not combine to make the same type of flavoring, it will then enhance that flavor, then not. And yet our Mishnah doesn't distinguish. It says tavlin, and it says that it's mistarfin. Mashma, that every type of tavlin, even if they don't have the same type of tastes, and they're not going to then enhance the same flavoring, it will also then mitztarif. Answers the Gemara, hachanami chazi lematek. Our Mishnah is also talking about tavlin that are going to be chazi, that are going to be fitting for producing the same type of seasoning and flavoring. The Gemara now quotes the next part of the Mishnah, klipe egoizim v'klipe rimoinim satim upua kedei litzboya beged koton, in order to then dye a small beged, that's the sheer minimum. V'aminu asked the Gemara the following, hamoitzi samonin shruyin kedei litzboya bahen dugma li'iro. It says over there that a person who takes out samonim that were shruyin, that were soaked and processed, the size shear that we're talking about over there is kedei litzboya behen dugma li'ira, to then dye a small type of example of that will go on a cloth, different types of coloring, to show the potential buyer what the dye looks like, that will go on the ira, and therefore that's a smaller shear than what our Mishnah mentions, which is kedei litzboa beged katan. Answers the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabbi Baravua, lefishin odam toreach lishrois samamonim litzboya behen dugma leira. That's because he says that a person is not going to then hassle himself to then be shoire, to then first process those samonim in order to then be tzoveya a dugma. But once it's already processed, it's already shruyin, then the minimum shear is going to be a smaller shear, which is to make this small example of the dye on a small cloth, which again is a smaller shear than our Mishnah states. The Gemara now brings the next item of the Mishnah, meiraglayim, is one of the detergents. Says the Gemara, Tana bringing a brisa, meiraglayim ad ben mem yom. It's referring to meiraglayim, urine that is at least 40 days old. that's then going to be effective as a certain detergent. Neser, Tana, the Brisa says, Neser lachzandris v'lo neser ampantrin. It's a nest that comes from Alexandrine, but not a nest that comes from Anampantrin, and therefore, if it would come from this place called Anampantrin, it would not be sufficient because it's not strong enough. It would have to be a bigger shiur. Boris, Rav Yehuda zeh chol. The Gemara identifies this as chol, as sand, as being this type of detergent, a cleaning agent. I asked the Gemara, Vahatanya, it says in the Brisa, Boris v'hachol. So it's mashim that Boris and chol are two different things. It says the Gemara, Elamai Boris kivrisa. Kivrisa is referring to sulfur. That's what Boris is. Meisvei asked the Gemara from the following, Hoisifu alein hachalavitzin v'halinun v'haboris v'haoil. Here we're talking about various things that were added in regards to the Isser Shvis. And one of those things are Boris. If you're going to say that it's a sulfur, and that's what Boris is, Kibrisa mi Isa b'shvis, will there be an Isser of Shvis, that it should be added as an Isser v'hatnan? The Mishnah tells us, really it's a Brisa, Zeh klal, kol sheyesh lo ikar, yesh lo shvis, v'shein lo ikar, ein lo shvis. Only that which has a root will have shvis, but not, and therefore sulfur doesn't have an ikar. Therefore, says the Gemara, Elamai Boris, it identifies it now as ohalo. And some explain that to be an aloe. And that is what Boris as a cleaning agent is. I asked the Gemara, not so fast, Vahatanya, but the Brisa says, Vaha Boris va'olo. It says Boris and Ola, two different things. Mashna Boris is not Ola. Answers the Gemara, Trey, Gavni, Ola. There are two different types of aloe, whereby this is one of them. Another cleaning agent that the Mishnah mentions is Kimulya. Rav Yehuda Sholuf Dots. Rav Yehuda identifies it as Sholuf Dots, another type of cleaning agent. Ashleg, says the Gemara Mashmuel, Shaltinu lekol nechusi yama. I asked all of those who go down to the yam, what is this item called Kimulya? Called Ashleg rather. Va'amruli, and they told me Shunano Shmei. Its name is Shunano. Shunano is the name of this item called Ashleg. Umishtakach benukva v'margeniso. It's found in the hole of a pearl. Umafki lein. You can extract it beramse de parzula with a pinted type of iron kli. Says the Gemara, bringing now the next Mishnah, Pilpeles Kol Shehu. This Mishnah states all of the minimum shiurim for Malachas Hoitzah, and in this Mishnah we'll find that all of these things have the minimum shiur of a Kol Shehu, the very smallest, minute type of amount. The first item is Pilpeles, and it's a Kol Shehu. Here we're not talking about the Pilpeles, the classical pepper that we know of, because if that were to be the case, that would be the Tavlin that we saw in the previous Mishnah, which has a bigger shiur. Here it's a Kol Shehu, so it's Pilpeles is something else. The Itran, when they burned the tar, so the psoilis of that tar then has a clear substance that emanates from that, and that's called Itran, which we saw in the second parak. And there the shear is a Kol Shehu. Mine besamim me matachois, different types of besamim, different types of metals. Kol Shehein, they have a minimum shear of a Kol Shehu. Me'avne hamizbeach or me'ofer hamizbeach. The stones of the mizbeach and the ofar, the dirt of the mizbeach. Mekek svarim, the decay of scrolls. Umekek mitpachosehem, that is also the decay of the covering of the scrolls. All of these have a minimum shear kol shehu shematznin oison the genizon, the goinzon. They'll have the minimum shear when you put aside for the geniza. Rabbi Yehuda Omer af hamoitzi misham she avodah zara kol shehu. Even avodah zara, if it's a kol shehu, also mechayev a carbon chatas for going out with that minimum minute amount. Shneimar says v'lo yidbak biyadcha me'uma min acherem. Even a little bit should not cleave to you, should not stay with you from that which is banned, referring to the avodah zara. Says the Gemara to identify the various things and explain why do they have a minimum shear of a kol shehu. Pilpeles kol shehu l'may chazia. What is it fitting for? Answers the Gemara, l'reach hapeh. It helps the reach hapeh as some sort of deodorizer, as a way of being a breath fresher. Oit itran kol shehu. The Mishnah says itran is also kol shehu. L'may chazia, asks the Gemara, what is this fitting for? Explains the Gemara, letzlichosa, for a person who has a headache on half of his head, by putting this itran, it will then help him feel better, and therefore this is a minimum shear that has significance. Mine besamim kol shehein, different types of besamim. L'may chazia. Tani Rabban, the Gemara elaborates, bringing a brisa, hamoitzi reach ra. A person goes out with a reach ra. What's the significance of a reach ra? Because even a minimum shear of a reach ra is important, because it's mafriach the mazikin from choylin for little children, and therefore it's considered to be of significance. Kol shehu. Shemen toiv, a good shemen that has nice smell, also a kol shehu. Argamon, this is a scented type of purple dye. Kol shehu. Ubesulas havered achas, and a young rose, even one petal, has significance to mechayev for a korban chatas meleches hoitzol. The Gemara now quotes the next part of the Mishnah, mine matochos kolshein, different types of metals, even them, a kolshu, a minute amount, will mechayev. L'may chozu, asks the Gemara, what is it? It's significant. Tanya, the Gemara brings a brayser, Rabbi Shimon Elazar Oimer, shekein roi lasos mimena darban koton. From these metals you can make a darban. A darban is, you put on the end of a stick a small piece of metal, a sharp piece of metal. It'll then go into the animal. If you want to then prod the animal, then the darban is effective, and therefore a small piece of metal goes on that darban, and therefore is considered to be essential and significant. Tony Rabban, the Gemara now brings a brayso. Ha'oimer harei alai barzel. A person says, upon me is barzel, is iron. In order to give it to berak habayis, he makes a harei alai, that is upon me to give that as a nedava. Acherim oimri lo yifchos me'ama al amma. Acherim explain that it can't be less than a size of an amma by an amma. L'may chazia, what is the significance of this? Om Rav Yosef lekalya orev, to get rid of the orev, the ravens, so they can't then stand above the heichal. So they would put these sharp places around the roof, so that if a raven would come, he would not be able to then sit and perch on this area. Vika da'amri, those have a different version. Acherim oimim lo yivchois mikalya orev. It can't be less than the kalya orev to get rid of these ravens. Now ask the kama, how much is this shiur? Omar Rav Yosef amma al amma. Nechoshes, he would say that I'm going to again give nechoshes to the Beirach Habayis. Then the Brisa says lo yivchois mimo kesef. It can't be less than a mo of kesef. Tanya Rabbi Eliezer lo yivchois mitzinuro ketanishon nechoshes. It can't be less than a small copper fork. L'may chazia, asks the Gemara, what is that significant for? Omar Abai shemechatetin boes hapsilois umekanchin haneros. They would trim the psilois, the wicks, and they would clean the lamps with these small copper forks. The Mishnah says, Mekek svarim mekek matpechoiseihem, the decay of the scrolls as well as the decay of their coverings, that will have significance, because since they have kedusha, therefore they have to be put in geniza, and therefore even the minimum shear is significant. Says the Gemara, not only is mekek a decay, but also is a reference to a worm. Omar Yehuda, mekak de sifrei, the worm of svarim, of scrolls. Tochach de shiroi, he goes on to say, the worm of silks. V'ilo de inve, and the worm called ilo of the anavim, of the grapes. Ufe te de ani, and the worm called fe, of the of the te'enim, of the figs, the hay, the rimoni, and the worm called the hay of the pomegranates, kulo sakanta. They are all dangerous. A person were to swallow them. The Gemara now brings an unfortunate incident. Hahu talmido dahava Yosef kamed Rabbi Yochanan hava ka'ochil te'eni. A student was sitting before Rabbi Yochanan eating figs. Omar lei, he said to his Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi koitzin yesh b'te'enim, there are thorns in these te'enim that I'm eating. Omar lei, or some of the gifts of Omar, Rabbi Yochanan stated, katlei fe ledain, that this worm called fe is here, meaning this is what's going to cause him his death. This is what killed this Talmid, because of this type of worm which has a sakana for the one who swallows it.